The OSS, Simple Sabotage Field Manual, where old spycraft meets modern management dysfunction. Stay tuned. Ramsey!
I'm already laughing about this for two reasons. One is supposedly, it's not supposedly, it really happened. My granddad's Aunt Billy, who talked to squirrels, was convinced that there were OSS agents talking to her throughout the yard where she lived. She lived with my granddad when he was a kid. My granddad would imitate her. He was fascinated by how she would talk to invisible people. So he started doing her mannerisms as a kid. Aunt Billy came up to my granddad's parents and said, "Listen, I'm worried about Johnny." So it was okay for it was okay for Aunt Billy to talk to the invisible people, but not Johnny, my granddad.
Yeah. Well, for folks who aren't as old as your grandma, we might want to explain what the heck we're talking about.
What are the OSS? Yeah.
All right, so the OSS, that was the precursor, the Office of Strategic Services. It was the precursor to what we now call the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. And so it was modeled on the British intelligence service. So we didn't, before World War II started, we didn't have, or World War XI, depending on where you're at, we didn't have an intelligence gathering service. Right. And so the director, William Wild Bill Donovan, he went over, saw what the British were doing. His story is wild. So he was a World War I vet. He received the 4 highest honors that any military person can receive, maybe the only person in history to do so, including a Medal of Honor recipient. He was awarded, other countries gave him their top awards for his service in World War I. And then in World War II, he was tasked to start the OSS. And being a man of action, he was actually on the beach in Normandy on D-Day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was strafed by a German airplane, machine guns flying past him. Just one of those. I don't know why there hasn't been a movie. Maybe there has been, but I don't know of a movie about this guy. But if you go into the CIA headquarters, which I do often, there's in the lobby, there's a statue, and it's Wild Bill Donovan. It's
nice.
The statue in the center of the CIA library. So Wild Bill signed this document, right? And so the Simple Sabotage Field Manual was to be treated as controlled training material. The purpose was not to create dramatic movie-style sabotage.
Right.
All right, so the purpose of this, and so you have to listen closely because the purpose of this will tie directly to your current work situation. The purpose was to create thousands of small points of friction that would slow transportation, production, communication, administration, and morale. So
this sounds relevant to our audience.
I'm picturing different people here, right? So the OSS believed that sympathetic civilians could be trained to disrupt enemy systems with ordinary tools, ordinary access, and ordinary behaviors. The manual focused on actions that were simple, repeatable, and difficult to detect. And so the idea was, this was turned into pamphlets and things like that. It was dropped behind enemy lines, countries that were occupied by the Germans. This was the instruction manual for civilians to slow things down. And we often forget about that, right? When these countries were occupied, stuff just continued, right? Manufacturing, offices, you always picture like everything, they took over a country and it was shut down. No, everyday life continued.
They lived life, yeah.
Yeah, and there were restaurants and offices and production facilities. And so the idea was, there was twofold, right? The first half of the book talks about physical disruption. Mm-hmm. if you're working for a manufacturer and you're producing stuff, for the Germans in the war effort, how to sabotage your machines, how to make sure
Right.
your lathe is just enough off that it's wrong, right?
Right.
How do create, you forget to lubricate things and they grind to a halt and stuff like
Right.
that. But the part of the book that we find most fascinating is there was human system disruption. And so the manual essentially frames this as purposeful stupidity. This is so good. So this is a book of how to be purposefully stupid in such a way that you bring your organization to a screeching halt.
Well, you said to me before we pressed record that this is like a manual to have Office Space, the movie, conducted in your workplace. And if that doesn't terrify you, I don't know what will. And it's just such inane stuff. It's such basic, like you said, it's stupid. It's just stupid behavior that would ruin your productivity.
Oh yeah. So yeah, as you're in an organization, you're in an occupied country. The enemy's requiring you to continue to do work, but you want to make it fail. You want to slow
Yep.
it down. And so we'll do two episodes. This first episode, there's three different sections. There's organizations and conferences, how to make those dysfunctional,
Yep.
how managers can make an organization dysfunctional. And if you're just an employee out there, we've got some tips for you too. How you can slow things down, right? How you can be purposely stupid. So it was just, absolutely amazing. And this is, like I said, this was classified.
Yeah.
This was material, right? This was top secret. It had to be unclassified for us to have access to what we have now.
Right.
So we'll dive into general interference with organizations and production. And so there's a list of things that you can do to make sure that things don't flow smoothly in your company.
Yeah.
I'll throw it over to you. Did you have any favorites on this list?
Oh man. I guess if we're going to skip around a little bit, there are 8 items here that you've picked out for us, and my favorite is make speeches.
Yes. All
Oh,
right.
should I
So
read the rest of that?
yeah, you got to read it because this is in the manual, right? We're not making
Yeah.
this up. The manual says under section A, organizations and conferences, subsection 2, make
Subsection 2.
speeches.
Make speeches.
This is written like the government wrote it.
Yeah, yeah. So make speeches. Talk. Actually, let's correct that. Make quote unquote speeches
Yeah, it's got the quotes.
with quotes. Talk as frequently as possible and at great length. Illustrate your quote unquote points by long anecdotes and accounts of personal experiences. Never hesitate to make a few appropriate quote unquote patriotic comments. Just perfect. I know this guy. I've
Yeah.
worked with this guy before.
There's people that are sitting there like, oh, I know him. I just left that meeting.
Yeah, right.
I was just in that room, right? Yeah. Talk as frequently as possible and at great length. Right? It could have stopped there, but no, it doubles down with, illustrate with long, not just anecdotes, long anecdotes and accounts of personal experiences. This one time in band camp,
Yeah, yeah.
just tangents and stories. And,
So, something not mentioned here is repeat those anecdotes as often as you can, right? The same stories keep coming up, and my favorite part is that it's patriotic, right? Like
right?
you're making that long-winded speech, and you're going to say something positive about the company. That's one of the reasons I'm still here. Yeah, but you're ruining things. Stop it. Stop it. So, I think this is a great one.
So even like as we begin to go through these, you start to wonder: has the person that does this, have they read the manual?
Is it on purpose?
like I read this management book. Maybe they didn't understand the point. Yeah, I read this book on leadership.
Yep.
Like I like number six.
Yeah.
Number six, refer back to matters decided upon at the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question of the advisability of that decision. That is just,
Make
that
sure
is,
we don't make a decision.
yeah, yeah. I
Bring
know
that up
we,
as fast as possible.
yeah, we decided that last meeting, but I'd like to re-decide it at this meeting. Are you sure we did the right thing when we made that decision? Right? Can I reopen that? And so now, right, the whole list of things you were going to talk about at the current meeting is
Yeah.
derailed because we got to
Yeah.
go back and talk about the stuff that we thought, didn't we? And you can see people going, I thought we made a decision on that. I thought this was settled. I thought this was, oh no, stir it back up, right? So now I've got this meeting's issues and last meeting's issues. I've got people confused. Yeah, this is brilliant, brilliant
Yep.
sabotage.
I love it. I love it. We also, since we're on six, we got to talk about seven. Advocate caution.
Yeah,
Be
yeah. Quote,
reason-
quote. You got to
yeah,
do
oh,
quotes.
again, yeah, quote unquote caution.
Caution. Yeah.
Be quote unquote reasonable and urge your fellow conferees to be quote unquote reasonable and avoid haste, which might result in embarrassment or difficulties later on. We just did an episode where a guy took a restaurant to number one by being unreasonable. That's part of the shtick, is that you've got to take some chances and do some things that just seem maybe a little crazy to somebody playing it safe. And let's make sure we don't do that, right? What's the quote from The Power of Moments about uh, the
Be, beware the
soul
soul
sucking?
sucking force of reasonableness.
Yeah, the soul sucking force of reasonableness.
Yep. Yeah, it'll just destroy you. Right. Well, you can almost hear this guy saying, "All right, we need to slow down.
Yep, yep,
We need to take into fact every thing that could happen here,
yeah,
and let's not rush into these things.
right,
Right? Is this
right.
reasonable? Is this do we bite off more than we could chew? Right? Was that a reasonable thing? Right?
Yeah,
We got to pace this out, right? Which, when you think about it, the context in which you're doing that, you've got the occupying force is monitoring these things, and the manual talks about this. You want to do these things in such a way that it looks natural, but slows the organization down, but doesn't get you
right,
shot.
right,
You don't want to stand out so much that they go, oh, this guy's, he's purposely undermining this organization. So
right.
I can do it in such a way that the Gestapo or whoever the force is doesn't catch on that I'm really doing this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that sort of brings up the point of a lot of these, there are positive reasons that some of these things need to be considered, right? We do need to have some level of caution. We just don't need to let reasonableness take over. I was reading a book this morning that was talking about that one of the dangers is to make something your idol, or to idly disregard it. That those are two extremes, right? And somewhere in the middle is the right thing. Well, this is taking something to the extreme. It just looks like you're not, right? So as an example, number one is insist on doing everything through quote unquote channels. Never permit shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions. And there's another one about the wordings. Number five, haggle over precise wordings of communications and minutes and resolutions. And I love those, right? Because they could eat through any attempt at progress, right? But sometimes you do need a shortcut. Sometimes you do need to just slap something down and say, this is the process we're going with for now. But
Mm-hmm.
sure, it's also true that you don't want to shortcut your processes forever and on all things, right? You got a
Mm-hmm.
process for a reason. You want your people to follow processes in the sales funnel, for instance, so that we don't miss any opportunities. And it is important to decide what a word means, right? That we have certain words we define and say this is what we mean when we say, well, the big example for me is always when Portia says Portia. They know what that means. That's not very Portia. That means something identical to everybody in the organization because they've defined it. So we're not saying that those things are bad to do, but this is taking the other extreme and saying, let's make sure we never, ever violate, that thing. We have to always do it, always, 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 always.
Right.
And that's where they get in trouble.
Well, yeah, and you can take the smallest decision and turn it into a big deal,
Yep.
which is going to
Yep.
slow the whole thing down.
Right.
I heard something the other day that relates directly to this. The person was talking about decision speed, and he said decision speed should be based upon whether or not this is a hat, a haircut, or a tattoo.
That's good.
Yeah, so if it's the equivalent of, like I can put on a hat, I can take it off immediately,
Yeah.
right? If it's a decision like that can be rapidly undone, make that decision quickly.
Yep.
If it's a haircut, right? I'm going to make this decision. It's going to be 30 to 60 days
Right.
before I can undo this if it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take a little bit longer to make that decision. And if it's a tattoo, it's going to be a permanent change.
Yeah.
Then we want to make that, we want to do the opposite. We want to do everything in here, right? Be reasonable, be cautious, be analytical, right? Do our due diligence before we make a tattoo level decision.
Yeah. That really applies to almost this entire list. It's like
Hmm.
do we want to go fast or slow? Well, it depends on how long we're going to live with the consequences.
Oh, yeah. Well, then my favorite, which we see a lot, number 4,
Okay.
bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible. That's just right. I've been in so many of those meetings. Like, I might be having some PTSD here. Just, yeah, you're getting somewhere productive, and then Bob goes, the origin story of darning socks is really fascinating, and it's one I'd like to share with you now. And why we don't do that anymore. And you're like, no, we're trying to sell cars.
Well, I'm
It's
thinking about a colleague you and I both had on a project long, long ago, and his name became a synonym for taking the floor to talk about something that had nothing to do with anything anybody was looking at. So I'm not going to say that name.
oh
But
yeah,
yeah, this is real life.
yeah, right. And to your point, right, slowing things down. Number 3 does a great job of that.
Yeah.
When possible, refer all matters to committees
Yep.
for further, quote, for further studies and consideration. And then my favorite part, right? Here's a little helpful
Yeah,
tip.
yeah. This is a big one.
Yeah. Attempt to make the committees as large as possible. Never less than 5.
Because they might get something done.
Yeah, I like that it adds never less than 5. Right? Don't screw up and get a committee of 4. They might make a decision and do
They might
something.
do something.
Yeah, we cannot have that. That would be ridiculous.
Oh, I love it so much.
This
Well,
this kind of reminds me of our reverse brainstorming exercise.
yeah, very
Yeah,
much so.
yeah, where you go, all right, let's list all the ways we can make this not work. And then at the end you go, well, what if we did the opposite?
Uh-huh.
So I, I'm good here. We got a couple more sections from the sabotage manual, so we'll take those up in the next episode. Any closing thoughts?
Just the one. I just imagine what all of the fellow countrymen thought of Judy when she started doing this at the secretarial pool, or Leroy started, causing problems on the factory line or in management. I love the idea of somebody who is really just grinding the gears of every single person around them and getting away with it and doing it for the good of the Allies. God bless them.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's for Queen and country.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. This is yeah. I'm the ultimate patriot. Let me tell you about the bird feeder I put in my backyard. Stop her! Somebody stop her! I can't. I can't go to another meeting with those stories. Right? You could hear the internal revolt within the company of
And
those
yet got
not
away
in the
with it,
know.
right?
Yeah.
Like these they're so minor that they got away with it. So
Oh
anyway,
yeah. So yeah, Wild Bill Donovan. Thank you for your manual, and
God
we'll
bless
take
him.
up a few more of these in our next episode.
Yep, can't wait.
In the meantime, we're going to throw it over to our announcer and maybe, if you're lucky, a ukulele solo. So take it away, Mr. Wolf.